Have you ever wanted to give up not because you failed, but because you did everything right and still lost? Have you remained faithful to a marriage while being deceived, loyal to an employer while being mocked, honest with people who repaid you with ingratitude and ridicule? Have you ever felt the pain of being wounded precisely by those you admired the most and realized that the deepest scars did not come from the world, but from the choices you made in order to obey God? At some point, faith begins to clash with reason because saying no seems sensible, yet something inside you knows that the path is still yes. There are people who give up because they made mistakes, and that is understandable. But there are others who want to give up because they obeyed, they endured, and still lost everything. It is when obedience stops being beautiful and becomes heavy, when faith brings no immediate relief and continuing feels illogical. And perhaps the most honest question is not whether obedience is worth it, but what happens inside someone who keeps going even when no one else understands, no one else supports them, and no one else applauds. It is exactly at this point that this story begins to make sense. What if obeying God were precisely the path that caused you to lose the most? What if doing what is right led you to silence, rejection, and isolation instead of recognition? There is a comfortable idea of faith that promises immediate peace, open doors, and acceptance, but real life rarely works that way. Sometimes the more faithful you are, the more alone you feel. And that leads to a question few have the courage to ask. Is it worth continuing when there is no visible reward? The story of Jeremiah confronts everything we expect from faith. He was called early, obeyed deeply, and yet faced spiritual rejection, abandonment by people, and long periods of God's silence. This is not a narrative of quick victory, but of faith without relief, of obedience that hurts, and of remaining when giving up seems more sensible. Perhaps this story is not only about an ancient prophet. Perhaps it is touching precisely the point where your faith is also being tested right now. Called before an identity is formed. Jeremiah is called before he feels ready. He is still young, insecure, and voices this without restraint. I am only a boy. God's calling comes before identity is organized, before self-confidence exists. God does not promise applause or public acceptance. He promises His presence within you. And that already reveals something. Obedience that hurts is almost never accompanied by comfort. How many times have you been pushed into responsibilities, decisions, or paths while you were still trying to understand yourself? Being called early creates inner conflict, loss of identity, and a kind of spiritual loneliness that is hard to explain. You feel that you must obey, but you do not feel prepared for the cost. Being called does not mean being welcomed, and this truth inaugurates a journey where faith without relief begins to be trained. Because what comes next tests not only obedience but the willingness to continue even without recognition. Speaking when no one wants to listen. Here you can see how obedience that hurts takes shape. Jeremiah delivers harsh, necessary, but unpopular messages. The people reject him, leaders rise up against him, and the threat of death becomes real. Speaking what needs to be said demands a high price, public rejection, public humiliation, and a kind of social abandonment that exhausts the soul. When truth makes people uncomfortable, faith without relief begins to be tested. You have likely been through situations where you chose to speak the truth, at work, in your family, or even in matters of faith. and quickly discovered a conditioned human interest. Many people only liked you as long as you pleased them. Spiritual rejection appears when your obedience exposes inconsistencies. This produces spiritual fatigue, emotional isolation, and even the desire to give up. Rejection begins when your obedience becomes uncomfortable, and this collision prepares the ground for something even harder: continuing to speak when silence feels safer. When people disappear, you can feel how the pain deepens when the attack comes from inside the house. Jeremiah discovers conspiracies formed by family members, people close to him, people who knew his story. Abandonment does not come with a warning. It happens behind the scenes in silence. Usefulness ends, affection evaporates, and social isolation settles in. At this point, spiritual loneliness stops being a concept and becomes a daily experience. This dynamic is not new. It already appeared in the story of Job. While there were possessions, there was company. When everything was lost, accusations remained. Today, this repeats itself when you stop being convenient, productive, or interesting. Many confuse support with advantage, presence with exchange. Conditioned human interest reveals that when you stop being useful, you also stop being accompanied. And this emptiness prepares the heart for an even heavier test: continuing to obey when no one else stays. The silence that wearied the soul. Here you arrive feeling the weight of God's silence. Jeremiah does not hide what he feels. He accuses God, says he was deceived, and exposes the unanswered pain he carries inside. This is not a lack of faith. It is faith without relief, tired, wounded, passing through a real crisis of faith. The calling continues, but heaven feels far too quiet. And the pain of the soul begins to mix with spiritual exhaustion. There are moments in life when you decide to stop, to give up, to fall silent. But you cannot. You try to walk away, but something burns inside, something insists, something will not let you go. It is the presence of God at work even in the silence, pulling you to continue obeying when everything in you wants to run. Mature faith is not comfortable, it is persistent. And that persistence prepares the heart to endure what is still to come, even when no one sees it. Public humiliation and total loss. You reach a point in the story where obedience stops being symbolic and becomes physical. Jeremiah is arrested, treated as a traitor, thrown into a dark cistern, and simply forgotten. There is no defense, no recognition, no public explanation. Public humiliation erases reputation, and social abandonment deepens the invisible pain. Here, obedience without reward reveals its real cost. This echoes the story of Job. He loses respect. Jeremiah loses public dignity. And today, this happens when you do what is right and still lose space, lose your voice, lose support. There are losses that do not come because you failed. They come because you remained faithful. Obedience can cost everything, including the image others had of you. And when everything seems lost on the outside, something decisive begins to be worked on within, preparing the heart for a perseverance that does not depend on applause. Pain without answers, without a happy ending. You arrive here and realize that the pain is not summarized, it is narrated. Jeremiah describes the suffering in detail, line by line, feeling by feeling. There is no clear answer, no immediate change, no dramatic turnaround. There is only unanswered pain, unjust suffering, and a weary heart trying to survive its own weight. It is the portrait of faith without relief when continuing is already the greatest effort of the day. Now bring this into your own reality. Not every pain receives an explanation, and not every suffering comes with quick closure. Some seasons of life do not ask for understanding, they ask for endurance. God does not interrupt the lament, does not censor the words, does not rush the process. God does not always explain, but He allows you to speak, and that alone is a sign of God's presence in the midst of chaos. This permission sustains the soul to cross through what has not yet ended. Hope does not erase the pain. You can see how hope emerges here without noise. Jeremiah does not describe a turning point. He describes support. Hope is born in the middle of pain, without eliminating the suffering, without changing the scenario. There is no euphoria. There is sustenance. Mature faith learns to breathe under the weight, to remain in silence when nothing improves on the outside. It is a hope that does not numb, but keeps you standing. This echoes Job. He did not understand. Jeremiah was not restored as he expected. Even so, both continued. In real life, this hope appears when you wake up tired and keep going, when the invisible pain remains, yet you choose to keep obeying. Hope is not relief. It is sustenance, and it prepares the heart to walk without guarantees, trusting in God's presence even when the path remains narrow. The story of Jeremiah is not about a strong, unshakable, or emotionally shielded prophet. It is about someone who felt fear, exhaustion, and deep soul pain and still remained. He obeyed when he was rejected, when he suffered public humiliation, when he lost support, and when God's presence felt far too silent. There was no applause, no visible reward, only faithfulness without applause. And this dismantles the comfortable idea that obedience always brings immediate return. Now the mirror slowly turns toward you, because perhaps this story is not only about an ancient prophet, but about those who continue doing what is right even while being forgotten. About those who live obedience without reward, pay a high emotional price, and carry an invisible pain that no one validates. You remain steady at work, in faith, in family, even under abandonment by people and emotional isolation. Not because it is easy, but because giving up would cost even more. And perhaps you too are obeying in silence, sustaining something no one sees. A calling that brings no recognition, a choice that brought loss, a faithfulness known only by you and God. That does not make you weak. It reveals spiritual perseverance and a mature faith that does not depend on relief. So the final question is not theoretical. It is intimate, almost whispered. What are you sustaining in silence out of faithfulness? Some journeys receive no applause, no external validation, no public recognition. They move forward in silence, sustained by decisions no one sees and by choices that cost deeply on the inside. Perhaps you are living exactly like this, obeying without visible return, remaining when it would be easier to retreat. Not every faithfulness is celebrated, but every faithfulness builds something that time cannot destroy. Sometimes continuing is the bravest act that exists. And if this message spoke to your heart, leave in the comments. Some seasons of life do not ask for understanding, they ask for endurance. The silence of this story is not the end. There are other stories here waiting for you. Now I invite you to pray with us. Prayer. Lord, give strength to continue obeying when the heart is tired and the silence weighs heavy. Sustain those who walk without relief, persevering even when rejection wounds and loneliness tightens its grip. Heal the wounds left by exclusion, abandonment, and the losses that came from doing what is right. Renew a mature faith that does not depend on immediate answers but trusts in your presence. Teach us to remain, even when only you see us. Amen.